Ambassador Sarah Chun sat in the designated human section of the Grand Galactic Council chamber and watched as species from across thousands of star systems debated the future of interstellar trade routes. The chamber itself was a marvel of architecture that stretched upward for what seemed like miles, with platforms hovering at different heights for different species. The Vextari, crystalline beings that looked like walking diamonds, occupied the highest platforms where light could refract through. Their bodies in dazzling displays below them sat the Koleth, whose hive minds allowed thousands of small insectoid creatures to function as one consciousness and speak with one voice. The Drachner delegation took up an entire section with their massive reptilian bodies covered in scales that had evolved to resist plasma fire. Then there was Earth's delegation tucked away in a corner near the back, with 5 humans sitting quietly at a desk that looked too small compared to the grand structures around them. Sarah had been serving as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for 2 years now, and she had learned many things in that time. She had learned that humanity was classified as observer species number 7,800. And 40 Twash had learned that Earth was permitted to watch council proceedings, but could not speak unless directly addressed by a council member. She had learned that being directly addressed happened approximately never. Her team consisted of 4 others. Marcus Webb, the military analyst who recorded every detail of council security procedures. Diesel Yuki Tanaka, who studied alien technologies and tried to understand how species achieved such advanced capabilities. James Rodriguez, the linguistic expert who had become fluent in 17 alien languages, and young Private Emma Stone, whose job was officially listed as administrative support, but who actually ran the most sophisticated surveillance operation Earth had ever deployed. The motion fails. Chairman Vexthor Crystallis announced in a voice that sounded like wind chimes made of starlight. The Qualeth petition for expanded mining rights in the Outer Veil is denied pending further environmental studies. The Qualeth delegation buzzed angrily, but said nothing. Sarah made a note on her tablet, not because the mining rights mattered to Earth, but because it showed how council politics actually worked. The Vextari had been blocking Qualeth expansion for 3 centuries, according to the historical records. It had nothing to do with environmental concerns and everything to do with keeping a potential rival species from gaining too much economic power. Next item. The chairman continued. The human request for colonial rights to System J772. Sarah sat up straighter. This was the 4th time in 2 years that Earth had petitioned for permission to establish a colony. The previous 3 requests had been denied without explanation. System J772 was uninhabited, with no sentient life and no valuable resources that any council species wanted. It was perfect for a small human settlement of maybe 10,000 people. Marcus leaned over and whispered, "Here we go again. The council has reviewed the human petition." Chairman Vexthor said in a tone that suggested he had barely glanced at it. "The request is denied. May I ask the reason for denial?" Sarah said, standing up. Several alien heads turned toward her observers. "We're not supposed to speak without permission." "You may not," the chairman replied. "Next item concerns." "Forgive the interruption, Chairman," Sarah said, keeping her voice calm and respectful. "But Earth has submitted 4 colonial requests in 2 years, and all have been denied without explanation, and we simply wish to understand what criteria we are failing to meet." The chamber went silent. A Drachner representative named Thrakener, who commanded 17 battle fleets, let out a sound that translator software rendered as laughter. "Perhaps the criteria is having evolved beyond primitive tribalism," Thrakener said, "or developing technology through actual innovation rather than stumbling onto FDL drive by accident." Several species made sounds of agreement. Sarah felt Marcus tense beside her, but she put a hand on his arm. "Thank you for that perspective," she said to Thrakener. with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Earth will take it under advisement. She sat down. Emma was already typing furiously on her tablet, creating a new file labeled Threckner, Drachna Military, Personal Profile. That would be cross-referenced with everything they knew about Drachna fleet movements and strategic weaknesses. This was how it had been for 2 years. Casual insults delivered with aristocratic indifference requests, denied without justification. Human innovations offered to the Council and ignored because they came from the primitive species. Dr. Tanaka had submitted a revolutionary new shield harmonics algorithm that could increase defensive capabilities by 30%. The Council's Technology Committee had filed it away without testing. James had offered translations of Earth literature and philosophy as cultural exchange. No species had requested a single text. Earth had offered to send medical teams to assist with a plague outbreak on a Vexthari colony. The offer was declined in favor of letting the plague run its course because Vexthari did not accept charity from lesser species. 12,000 Vexthari died who could have been saved. Sarah wrote everything down, every insult cataloged, every dismissal documented, every species that laughed at human expense noted and filed. Are they always like this? Emma had asked after the first month. Yes, Sarah had replied. And we're going to let them be exactly like this for as long as it takes. As long as what takes? As long as it takes for them to show us who they really are. The council session continued for another 6 hours. Humanity's name came up twice more, once when a minor species suggested that Earth's mathematical approach to quantum field manipulation might be worth investigating. A Vexthari scientists dismissed it as the fumbling of children playing with equations they don't understand. The second time was during a discussion of military protocols when Threckner suggested that Earth should not be granted access to Council defense networks because we would not give a child access to a plasma cannon. Sarah smiled and took notes. Marcus documented the entire Drachna security briefing that Threckner had accidentally revealed during his speech. Yuki recorded the energy signatures of every ship in orbit around the Council station. James analyzed speech patterns and identified which species held genuine power versus which ones simply had loud voices. Emma surveillance programs quietly copied 73 terabytes of data from unsecured Council networks. When the session finally ended, Sarah stood and bowed respectfully to the chairman. Thank you for another enlightening session, she said. Chairman Vexter barely acknowledged her as the human delegation left the chamber and walked through corridors filled with species that towered over them or slithered past them or flew above them. Sarah felt Marcus lean close. How much longer do we have to endure this? Until they crossed the line, Sarah said quietly. What line? We'll know it when we see it. Behind them, Private Emma Stone's tablet pinged softly. Another security protocol mapped another weakness, identified another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Earth had been part of the Galactic Council for 2 years. They had been insulted, dismissed, and humiliated for 2 years. And for 2 years, they had been planning not for war was inefficient. They had been planning for something much more devastating than war. They had been planning for the moment when the galaxy would learn what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. That moment was coming soon. 3 Earth years had passed since humanity first took their seat as observer. Species 7842 Ambassador Sarah Chun had watched more than 400 council sessions during that time and had witnessed the casual cruelty of galactic politics transform from shocking to routine. Today was different. Today was the Centennial Accord ceremony when the Galactic Council renewed its commitment to peace, prosperity, and mutual respect among all member species. The ceremony happened once every 100 standard galactic years and was broadcast live to every civilized world in known space. Billions across thousands of planets would watch the grand spectacle. Sarah and her team sat in their usual corner, but the chamber had been decorated for the occasion, floating Lights drifted through the air like miniature stars. Holographic displays showed the founding of the Council 10,000 years ago, when the first species came together to end the War of Burning. Sun's music that somehow translated across species barriers filled the vast space with sounds that touched something primal in every being present. Chairman Vexthor Crystallis stood at the central podium, his crystalline body refracting the ceremonial lights into rainbow patterns across the chamber walls. "We gather today, as we have gathered for 100 centuries, he began, "to remember that unity is strength and diversity is our greatest achievement." The assembled species responded with cheers, clicks, buzzes, and roars of approval. Sarah noticed that several camera drones were focusing on the human delegation. That was unusual. Humans were typically excluded from ceremony footage. To honor this occasion, the chairman continued, "We have prepared a special presentation that celebrates our shared history and reminds us of the journey. Many species take the word enlightenment." The lights dimmed. A massive holographic display activated in the center of the chamber. Sarah felt a cold sensation in her stomach as she recognized what was being shown. It was Earth's first contact with the Galactic Council 3 years ago. Holograms showed a human ship approaching a council vessel, but something was wrong. The human ship was portrayed as a crude, ugly thing held together with what looked like tape and hope. The actual ship had been a masterpiece of human engineering. Holograms showed the airlock opening and human diplomats stepping out, but these weren't accurate representations. These were caricatures. The humans in the hologram walked with knuckles dragging like primates. Their faces were exaggerated with oversized eyes and slack jaws, suggesting stupidity. Translator had their voices rendered as grunts and simple words. The council chamber erupted in laughter. Sarah's jaw clenched beside her. Marcus had gone completely still in the way that combat veterans do when they're suppressing rage. The holographic presentation continued. It showed primitive humans being amazed by simple technology like doors that opened automatically. It showed them trying to eat with utensils and failing comedically. It showed a human scientist examining a datapad upside down. More laughter rippled through the chamber. Species that had barely acknowledged humanity's existence for 3 years were now finding them. Hilarious star Yuki Tanaka was gripping her armrest so hard her knuckles had turned white. James Rodriguez had his eyes closed and was breathing slowly through his nose. Emma Stone was recording everything with a camera built into her lapel pin. The presentation reached its finale. Vexthari narrator appeared in the hologram, speaking in a voice dripping with condescension. "Let this serve as a reminder that not all species are created equal." The narrator said, "Some reach for the stars through wisdom and evolution, while others stumble into them through blind luck." The holographic Earth appeared surrounded by statistics. Projected human extinction, 200 standard years, the narrator announced. Cause: self-destructive tendencies and inability to overcome primitive violent nature. The hologram showed Earth exploding in a theatrical display of fire. The chamber's laughter reached a crescendo. Chairman Vexthor smiled as the presentation ended. "Let this remind us all," he said, "of the importance of true enlightenment and the long, patient road of evolution that separates the great species from those who may never achieve greatness." He looked directly at Sarah as he said it. The chamber erupted in applause. Sarah stood. The action was so unexpected that the applause faltered. Observers never stood during council sessions, especially not during ceremonies. The entire chamber turned to look at the human delegation. Sarah reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a small metallic device. It was a data chip, standard technology that every species in the council used. She walked slowly to her desk, with every camera in the chamber following her movement. With deliberate care, she placed the data chip in the center of her desk. Then she looked up at Chairman Vexthor. Eyes met across the vast distance of the chamber. Sarah said nothing. She simply turned and walked toward the exit. Marcus stood and followed, then Yuki, then James, then Emma, the five humans, walked through the silent chamber in single file, not rushing, not running, just walking with quiet dignity toward the exit. Ambassador Chan, Chairman Vexter, called out, "The ceremony is not concluded, and you have not been dismissed." Sarah stopped at the doorway. She turned back to face the chamber. "Neither have we," she said quietly. Then she walked out. Human delegation left the council station within the hour. Their ship departed without requesting permission or filing a flight plan within 6 hours. Every human vessel in council space had begun returning to Earth. The embassy on the council homeworld closed its doors. Human colonists on frontier worlds received encrypted messages and began evacuating within days. The few human trading ships operating in galactic space turned around and headed back to Sol System. Chairman Vexter tried to establish communication with Earth. His messages went unanswered. The council convened an emergency session to discuss the situation. "Should we be concerned?" one junior member asked. "Concerned about what?" Threkener laughed. That the primitive species had their feelings hurt? They violated protocol by leaving during a ceremony. A Quileth representative buzzed. "Perhaps sanctions are appropriate." "Sanctions for what?" Another voice asked. "They've already isolated themselves and saved us the trouble." The council decided to take no action if humanity wanted to sulk in their single star system. That was their choice. The galaxy would continue without them. What the council didn't notice was the data chip. Sarah had left behind. It sat on the human delegation's desk for 2 days before a maintenance worker found it and turned it into lost property. It sat in lost property for a week before someone thought to scan it. It appeared to be blank. The worker threw it away. What nobody knew was that the chip had activated the moment Sarah placed it on the desk. For 3 years it had been in her pocket, waiting. When activated, it had connected wirelessly to every unsecured system within range, which in the council chamber included the main network hub. Chip contained a program written by the finest human programmers, a virus that was so sophisticated it made council security look like children's locks. The virus didn't destroy anything. It didn't set off any alarms. It simply copied everything. Every military document, every economic report, every diplomatic communication, every strategic plan, every technology schematic, every security protocol. 3 years of council data flowing into council systems, and now all of it was flowing out. By the time the chip was thrown away, the virus had already spread to 17,000 council systems across 40 different species. Networks. It sat quietly and copied everything while sending the data through a network of relay satellites that looked like space debris. Data flowed across the galaxy in streams too small to detect, and on Earth in a facility buried 3 kilometers beneath the surface of Antarctica, human analysts began receiving the most comprehensive intelligence dump in the history of warfare. "My God," Marcus whispered as he watched the data pour in. "We have everything." "Not everything," Sarah corrected. "We have what they know. And that's even better." She looked at the screens showing council military deployments, economic forecasts, and strategic projections. "Now we show them what happens when you mistake silence for submission." The council had laughed at humanity. They had mocked Earth's achievements. They had predicted human extinction within 200 years. They were about to learn that humans had a saying about predictions. The best way to predict the future is to create it, and Earth was about to create a future the council would never forget. 18 months had passed since Earth went silent. The Galactic Council had barely noticed at first. One minor observer species withdrawing from galactic affairs was hardly newsworthy when measured against the vast scope of council business. But slowly, things began to change in ways that seemed unconnected. Commander Threkener of the Drachner military stood on the bridge of his flagship, Eternal Fury, and stared at the tactical display with growing confusion. "Say that again," he ordered his communications. "Officer, so 3 of our border patrol fleets have failed to report in," the officer repeated. Fleet designations Talon Wing, Ghost Reach, and Void Stalker. All three? Threckener's scales rippled with agitation. When did we last hear from them? Talon. Wing reported position and status 6 hours ago. The officer consulted his terminal. Ghost Reach reported 4 hours ago, and Void Stalker 2 hours ago. And now? Nothing, sir, and we cannot establish communication and their transponder signals have gone dark. Threckener felt something he rarely experienced. Concern 3. Entire fleets disappearing within hours of each other was not normal equipment failure. Send recovery vessels to their last known positions. He ordered, and increase alert. Status across all border sectors. The recovery vessels found nothing. No debris, no signs of battle, no. Emergency beacons Ninity 7 Drachna warships and their crews had simply vanished on the other side of Council space. A Quoleth mining administrator named Collective Voice 700 materialized its consciousness at the site of what had been the most productive mining operation in the sector. Now it was a crater. The entire facility had been destroyed in an explosion so complete that investigators couldn't even determine what had caused it. Analysis 700 demanded. A swarm of worker units buzzed around the wreckage. Unknown explosive signature, they reported in unison. No match for any known weapon system. Sabotage? Possible, but security recordings show no intrusion, and all personnel passed background verification. How many did we lose? 3,742 units. 700 felt the collective intelligence process this information. 3,000 units was a significant loss, even for a species that numbered in the trillions. Increase security at all mining facilities. 700 ordered, and request Council investigation. Similar incidents were occurring throughout Council space. A major trade route between Vexthari and neutral zones experienced a series of navigational anomalies that caused 17 cargo vessels to arrive weeks late or not at all. Economic impact was measured in billions of credits. Pirate attacks, which had been a minor nuisance for centuries, suddenly became coordinated, and deadly pirates seemed to know exactly which ships carried valuable cargo and exactly when those ships would be vulnerable. A Council scientific research station studying dark matter fluctuations lost all power during a critical experiment. The backup systems failed simultaneously. 17 scientists died when life support went offline. Each incident was investigated. Each investigation found different causes: equipment failure, human error, natural phenomena, random chance. But there were those who noticed patterns. Analyst Shimmerthil was a mid-level Vexthari intelligence officer whose job was to review incident reports and look for connections. She had been doing this job for 43 years and had developed an instinct for when something felt wrong. This felt wrong. She created a database and began entering every unusual incident from the past 18 months. Mining explosion. 18 months ago, first Drachner fleet disappearance. 17 months ago, raid route anomalies. 16 months ago, research station failure. 14 months ago, pirate attacks. Ongoing but increasing in sophistication over 18 months. She stared at the timeline and felt her crystalline structure resonate with realization. 18 months ago was when Earth went silent. She began cross-referencing every incident occurred in regions where human ships had been operating during their 3 years on the Council. Every security breach happened at facilities that human personnel had visited or had line of sight to during Council sessions. Every pirate attack used tactics that matched human military doctrine from their pre-FDL war. Shimmerthil drafted a report titled Potential Human Involvement in Council Security Incidents and submitted it through proper channels. The report reached her supervisor, who read it and immediately filed it as speculative analysis, low priority. The humans lack the capability for such operations, her supervisor told her. They barely achieved FTL travel, and their technology is centuries behind ours. But what if they've been hiding their capabilities? Shimmerthil argued. Then they would have revealed those capabilities during their 3 years with us. The supervisor said dismissively, species that advance don't sit quietly and accept observer status. Shimmerthil wanted to argue that maybe that was exactly what an advanced species would do, but she was mid-level intelligence and her supervisor. With senior council staff, she said nothing and returned to her duties. The incidents continued. A Vexthari diplomatic vessel carrying sensitive treaty documents was intercepted in neutral space. The interceptors were never identified, but they knew exactly which vessel to target and exactly what documents to copy. Council military installations began reporting attempted intrusions into their computer systems. The intrusions always failed. The firewalls held, but the fact that someone was trying and doing so with increasing sophistication was concerning. Who has the technology to even attempt breaching Council security? Admiral Kreshtar asked during a classified military briefing. The Drachner, someone suggested, our own security measures would not hold against us, Threkener replied. These intrusion attempts are being blocked, which means they come from someone less advanced. The Qualeth then. Collective intelligence requires organic computing nodes, a Qualeth representative buzzed. These intrusions show pure digital architecture. The assembled military leaders looked at each other. Then who? Nobody had an answer on Earth in the Antarctic facility that didn't officially exist. Sarah Chun watched real-time displays of Council military readiness. They're getting nervous, Marcus observed. Threat assessment meetings have tripled in the past month. Good, Sarah replied. Nervous people make mistakes. Are we ready? Sarah looked at the wall of screens showing every piece of intelligence they had gathered. 3 years of Council data from the virus, 18 months of active reconnaissance from stealth operations. Complete. Maps of every Council military installation. Full understanding of every species' strategic doctrine, detailed. Psychological profiles of every Council leader. We're ready, she said. How are our new ships performing? Beyond expectations, Marcus brought up technical specifications. The quantum stealth systems make us completely invisible to Council sensors. And the new weapons platforms exceeded every projection in testing. Yuki Tanaka entered the command center carrying a datapad. Final analysis complete. She announced, we now understand every major Council technology and have developed countermeasures for all of them. And our own advances? The past 18 months of unrestricted research and development have moved human technology forward by approximately 200 years using Council standards as measurement. Yuki smiled. We're not just catching up anymore. James Rodriguez joined them looking exhausted. Linguistic analysis finished, he reported. We can now predict Council political responses with 87% accuracy based on cultural communication patterns and the psychological operations? Sarah asked, ready to deploy. Emma Stone said from her station, we can manipulate Council information networks to create any narrative we want. Sarah took a deep breath. 18 months of silence, 18 months of work, 18 months of becoming something the Council never expected. They think we ran away, she said quietly. They think we're hiding in our star system licking our wounds. Let them think that, Marcus replied, until we're ready to show them the truth. What is the truth? Emma asked. Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The truth is that humanity doesn't get mad, and we don't get even, she said. We get comprehensive. She looked at her team, send the signal, and begin final preparations, and in 72 hours the Galactic Council is going to learn what it means to underestimate Earth. Across the galaxy, Council species continued their daily routines. They argued over trade agreements. They negotiated territorial disputes. They prepared for the next Council session. None of them knew that human ships were positioned throughout Council space. None of them knew that human intelligence had penetrated every major network. None of them knew that Earth had been counting down to this moment for 18 months. The galaxy was about to change, and humanity was about to announce that they were done being silent. The emergency council session was already descending into chaos when the screens went. Dark Chairman Vexter Crystallis had called the meeting to address what he termed the growing security crisis, but the assembled delegates seemed more interested in accusing each other than finding solutions. The Drachner military expansionism has finally shown its true face. A Qualeth representative was buzzing angrily. Your fleet movements are clearly preparation for territorial seizure. Ridiculous, Thrakana roared. The Qualeth collective seeks to dominate galactic economics through sabotage and market manipulation. Both of you are paranoid fools. A Vexthari senator interjected. These incidents are obviously the work of fringe elements trying to destabilize the council. The argument continued escalating until every major species was shouting accusations at every other species. The carefully maintained peace that had lasted for centuries was fracturing. Chairman Vexter was about to call for order when every display screen in the chamber went black. Then they turned back on, but instead of showing council insignia or session information, they showed a human face. Ambassador Sarah Chun appeared on every screen in the chamber and on every screen in every council facility across the galaxy and on every public broadcast channel, from the core worlds to the outer rim. Billions of beings on thousands of planets stopped what they were doing and watched. Members of the Galactic Council, Sarah began in a voice that was perfectly calm and professional. 18 months ago, you made your position on humanity abundantly clear. The council chamber had gone completely silent. You created entertainment that portrayed us as primitive creatures stumbling through space. Sarah continued. You predicted our extinction within 200 years, and you broadcast this humiliation to the entire galaxy. Her expression remained neutral, almost pleasant. We heard you and we accepted your assessment. And we left. The screen split, showing Sarah on one side, and on the other side a montage of images began playing. What happened next was not revenge, Sarah said. It was a demonstration. The images showed sleek ships, unlike anything the council had seen, human vessels with hull configurations that seemed to bend light itself. This is footage of human reconnaissance ships conducting operations throughout council space over the past 18 months, Sarah explained. The montage showed a human vessel approaching a Qualeth mining facility. The timestamp matched the date of the mysterious explosion. We destroyed mining installation. Cassivan-49, using a shaped antimatter charge that left no traceable signature, Sarah said matter-of-factly. 3,742 Qualeth units died, and we regret that loss, but it was necessary to demonstrate our capabilities. The chamber erupted in shocked sounds from a dozen different species. The montage continued, human ships intercepting Drachner patrol fleets. We captured 97 Drachner warships and their crews, Sarah said. They are alive and unharmed, being held in a location you will never find, and their ships have been completely analyzed, and we now understand every aspect of Drachner military technology. Thrakana made a sound like grinding boulders more. Footage appeared, human operatives infiltrating council facilities. We breached security at 417 council installations, Sarah continued. We copied classified documents and mapped defensive systems and placed monitoring equipment that is still active as I speak. A Vexthari senator stood up, trembling with rage. This is an act of war, he shouted. No, Sarah replied calmly. War would have been destroying those installations and killing everyone inside, which we could have done easily, but instead we demonstrated restraint. The montage showed complex network diagrams, every attempted intrusion into council computer systems over the past 18 months was us testing your security, Sarah explained. We needed to understand your encryption, your firewalls, your response protocols. And now we understand all of it, she added. We can access any council system at any time and there. There's nothing you can do to stop us. The display changed, showing a map of the entire galaxy with thousands of points highlighted. These markers represent every council military installation, every research facility, every economic hub, and every government center. Sarah said, "We know where they all are, and we know their exact defensive capabilities, and we have weapons positioned to neutralize them if necessary." Chairman Vexter found his voice. "You claim to be peaceful," he said, "yet you conduct military operations against council members, and you threaten us with destruction." "We conducted reconnaissance operations," Sarah corrected, "not military strikes, and we make no threats, only statements of capability." Her expression hardened slightly. "You asked if we were enlightened enough to join galactic civilization," she said. "So we showed you what enlightened humans can do when properly motivated." The display changed again, showing technical schematics that made council scientists watching across the galaxy feel their blood run cold. "This is human quantum stealth technology," Sarah explained. "It renders our ships completely invisible to all council sensor systems, and we developed it in the 18 months since we left." More schematics appeared. "This is our new propulsion system, which is 40% faster than the best. Council drives." More images. "This is our adaptive shielding, which reconfigures in real time to counter any weapon type. This is our neural network, combat AI, which can outthink any biological pilot by orders of magnitude. This is our precision antimatter deployment system. This is our gravity well generator that can trap entire fleets in normal space." The list continued, each new technology more advanced than the last. Dr. Yuki Tanaka had called it 200 years of advancement in 18 months. But watching the council's reactions, Sarah thought that might have been conservative. "How?" A Qualith voice buzzed. "How is this possible?" "Because you gave us motivation," Sarah replied simply. "And humans are exceptionally good at advancement when motivated." She leaned forward slightly. "For 3 years, we sat in your council chamber and watched and listened and learned," she said. "We recorded every detail of your technology, your politics, your military doctrine, your economic systems, and your cultural blind spots. We smiled when you insulted us, and we took notes when you dismissed our innovations, and we cataloged every moment of disrespect. Then you created that presentation." Her voice went cold. "You portrayed us as animals for the entertainment of the entire galaxy, and you predicted our extinction with such confidence." Sarah paused. "That was your mistake," she said, "because humans have a particular trait that you failed to account for in your evolutionary superiority calculations. When you tell us we cannot do something, we take it as a challenge. When you say we will fail, we become determined to succeed. When you predict our extinction, we decide to prove you wrong." The display changed one final time, showing the data chip Sarah had left behind 18 months ago. This device contained a virus that has been copying council data for the entire 18 months we've been gone, Sarah said. "Every communication, every military order, every technological advancement, every strategic plan. We know everything you know, and we've built upon it. And now we know things you don't." She let that sink in. "We could have destroyed your trade routes," Sarah continued. "We could have crippled your militaries, and we could have turned you against each other until the council collapsed into civil war. We didn't," she said firmly, "because despite what you believe about our primitive, violent nature, we are not monsters. We are not conquerors," Sarah said. "We have conquered ourselves enough times throughout our history to know exactly how that ends. But we are also not victims, and we are not subjects, and we are definitely not observers." Chairman Vexter spoke carefully. "What do you want?" Sarah smiled. "We want what we have always wanted," she said. Respect. A document appeared on every screen. This is a treaty completely rewritten, Sarah explained. It grants Earth full council membership with all rights and privileges, and it establishes clear protocols preventing any species from being publicly demeaned or treated as inferior. It grants humanity territorial rights to 47 uninhabited systems that we have selected. It mandates cultural exchange programs based on mutual respect. It creates oversight committees with representatives from all species, including newer members. And it begins with a formal apology from the Council for the treatment we received. You have 72 hours to ratify this treaty, Sarah said. If you accept, then Earth returns to Council space as full partners and equals, and we will share our technological advances and work together toward genuine mutual prosperity. If you refuse, then humanity withdraws permanently. Her voice became steel. We will seal our borders, and you will never enter our space or use our technology or communicate with us again. And you will spend the rest of your existence wondering what else we are capable of, Sarah added quietly, and whether we are still watching. The screens went dark. The council chamber remained silent. Then everyone started talking at Ansi. Thrakana was demanding military action. Koleth representatives were calculating economic impacts. Vexthari senators were arguing about sovereignty. Chairman Vexter raised his hands, calling for order. We will debate this matter, he announced. And we will vote. Deep in the Antarctic facility, Sarah Chen watched the chaos unfold. Two monitoring systems. Think they'll accept? Marcus asked. They have to. Sarah replied. We've shown them what we can do, and the vote was scheduled for exactly 72 hours after Sarah Chen's message. The Galactic Council chamber was filled beyond capacity with representatives from every member species, crowding in to witness what many believed would be the most important vote in Council history. Chairman Vexter Crystallis stood at his podium looking older than his 300 years. The past 3 days had been spent in constant debate and analysis and argument. Military experts had reviewed the footage of human operations. Their conclusion was unanimous and terrifying. Everything the humans claimed was true. Technology assessment teams had analyzed the specifications Sarah had shown. Their conclusion was equally disturbing. Human advancement had indeed leaped forward by centuries in mere months. Intelligence analysts had checked their own systems for the intrusions. Sarah mentioned they found monitoring devices in places that should have been impossible to breach. Economic forecasters had modeled what would happen if Earth sealed its borders permanently. The projections showed significant disruption to trade routes and resource access. But the debate was not really about capabilities or economics. It was about pride. We cannot allow ourselves to be threatened by a species that only achieved spaceflight 3 years ago, Senator Kreshver of the Vexthari had argued. It sets a precedent that undermines the entire authority structure of the Council. The precedent has already been set, analyst Shimmerthil had countered. The humans demonstrated that intelligence and adaptability matter more than age, and they did it while we laughed at them. They humiliated us. Thrakanar had roared. A military response is the only appropriate answer. A military response against an enemy that has already infiltrated our defenses? Another voice questioned. That is not strategy, that is suicide. The arguments had continued for 3 days straight. Species that had been allies for centuries found themselves on opposite sides. Ancient grudges resurfaced, new alliances formed. The council that had maintained galactic peace for 10,000 years was fracturing, and everyone knew that the humans were watching. In the Antarctic facility, Sarah sat with her team, watching the council debate through their monitoring systems. They're really struggling with this, Emma observed. Good, Marcus replied. Let them struggle and let them understand what it feels like to be powerless. We're not trying to make them feel powerless, Sarah corrected. We're trying to make them understand that power comes in many forms. Yuki Tanaka was reviewing technical data. If they vote no, what's our actual plan? She asked. We've demonstrated capabilities, but we haven't actually prepared for total isolation, have we? Sarah smiled. We've prepared for everything, she said. If they vote no, we seal the borders, and we continue advancing, and in another 5 years, we return with technology that makes what? We showed them look primitive. And if they vote yes, then we integrate carefully, Sarah replied. We share some technology, but not all, and we build genuine partnerships while maintaining defensive capabilities. And we prove that cooperation is more valuable than domination. James Rodriguez looked up from his analysis. The vote is starting. Everyone turned to watch the screen's chairman. Vexler's voice echoed through the chamber. The council will now vote on the treaty proposed by Earth. He announced, this requires a 70% majority to pass. The voting system activated. Each species representative entered their decision. The numbers began to climb on the display. Of 23% against, 41%, Sarah felt. Her stomach tightened. Marcus leaned forward for 38% against, 52%. They're going to reject it, Emma whispered. For 49% against, 49%. Chamber was completely silent as the final votes were. Registered for 71% against, 29%. The treaty passed. Sarah let out a breath. She didn't realize she'd been holding. Marcus started laughing. They actually did it, he said. They actually accepted, on the screen's chairman. Vexler was announcing the results. By majority vote, the council accepts Earth's treaty, he said. Humanity is hereby granted full membership status with all rights and privileges. The chamber erupted in mixed reactions. Some species cheered, others sat in angry silence, but the vote was binding. When do we return? Yuki asked. Give them 24 hours to process. Sarah replied. Then we make our entrance. 24 hours later, Ambassador Sarah Chun walked into the council chamber, but this time she was not alone. Behind her came a delegation of 20 humans representing different aspects of Earth civilization: scientists, engineers, military advisors, economic specialists, cultural ambassadors. They walked to the section that had been designated for Earth, not in the corner where observers sat, but in the main circle among the elder species. Sarah's seat was now positioned between the Vexthari and Quoleth delegations. She sat down and looked around the chamber. Many faces showed resentment, some showed fury. Few showed what might have been respect. Chairman Vexler stood. Before we begin today's session, he said stiffly, the council wishes to extend a formal apology to Earth for the presentation shown at the Centennial Accord ceremony. That presentation did not reflect council values, and it was inappropriate and disrespectful. Sarah stood. The apology is accepted, she said simply, and humanity looks forward to working with all council members as equals and partners. She sat back down. Session began with discussion of trade route modifications. It was routine bureaucratic work, but it was the first time in 3 years that humanity had a voice in the decisions. When the trade route vote was called, Sarah voted. Her vote counted the same as every other species. 2 hours into the session, Chairman Vexler approached Sarah during a recess. Ambassador Chun, he said quietly, may I speak with you privately? They moved to a small conference room off the main chamber. You planned this from the beginning, Vexler said. The Quiet Observer Act and the data collection and everything. It was not a question. Sarah met his crystalline gaze. We planned to learn who you really were, she replied. You showed us and we responded accordingly. By infiltrating our systems and demonstrating military superiority? By proving that we belonged here, Sarah corrected. You made assumptions based on age and appearance, and you never bothered to look deeper. She leaned back in her chair. Humanity has been underestimated throughout our entire history, she said. We're used to it, and we know how to turn it to our advantage. That data chip I left behind? She continued. It was in my pocket for 3 years, and at any point I could have activated it. But I waited. Waited for what? For you to show me that you were truly beyond redemption, Sarah said. Or to show me that beneath the arrogance there was still wisdom. And your conclusion? The vote was 71% in favor, Sarah replied. Which means that despite everything, enough of you were capable of making the intelligent choice. Vexter was silent for a moment. What would you have done if we voted no? Sarah smiled, but there was no humor in it. You don't want to know, Chairman, she said. You really don't want to know. But here's what you should know, she continued. Humanity does not want to conquer the galaxy, and we have tried conquest before on our own world, and it never ends well. We don't want to dominate other species, she said. We have enough experience with that particular evil. What we want is simple. Sarah met his eyes. We want to be treated with the same respect we show others, and we want a voice in decisions that affect us, and we want the opportunity to contribute to galactic civilization. That's all we ever wanted. But a voice hardened. We will never again sit quietly while being disrespected, and that line is drawn, and it is permanent. Vexter nodded slowly. It was a gesture he had learned. From watching humans a sign of understanding, the galaxy is changing, he said. The galaxy changed the moment you laughed at us. Sarah replied, You just didn't notice until now. They returned to the chamber. The session continued over the following weeks. Humanity integrated into Council operations, Earth. Scientists began collaborating with alien researchers. Human engineers started working on joint infrastructure projects. Military advisors from all species, including Earth, began coordinating on security matters. It was not smooth. There were arguments and misunderstandings and cultural conflicts. Some species remained resentful. Some council members actively worked to undermine human initiatives. But humanity had a voice now, and that voice could not be ignored. 3 months after the vote, Sarah was reviewing reports when Marcus entered her office. Interesting development, he said. The Vextari have requested human assistance with a technology problem they've been struggling with for decades. What kind of problem? Quantum computing stability, Marcus replied. They heard about our AI systems and want to know if we can help. Sarah smiled. Set up a meeting, she said, and make sure Dr. Tanaka leads the team. You're really going to help them after everything? Of course, Sarah replied. That's what partners do. She looked at the star map on her wall showing Earth's new territorial allocations. 47. Systems where humans could build and grow and thrive. We proved we could hurt them, she said. Now we prove we can help them, and that's how you win respect that lasts. Marcus nodded and turned to leave. Marcus, Sarah called after him. Yes? Make sure our defensive systems stay at full readiness, she said. Trust but verify. Always.